All right, we are live, and I am Jean Schumacher. I am the Starch Queen of Diamonds, and I'm here with my other host, Nancy Normie Matthews, who is the Starch Queen of Hearts. And together we're the Starch Queens, and we have a program that can help you to change your health destiny, lose weight, and just feel amazing. You can find that at www.sqweightloss.com. And also check out a lot of our resources on starchqueens.net. Lots of recipes, interactions, videos, all kinds of good stuff. And tonight we are doing a show, we're focusing on Alzheimer's because I think this is such a huge, huge issue. And I can't say enough about it. I mean, I lost my mother. I mean, my mother had a whole host of issues. But at the end, she lost a lot of her ability to function and her ability to think. She didn't know us, at the end, which is probably one of the most disconcerting things ever, is to have your mother not know who you are. It is. And then we just lost my mother-in-law, this year to Alzheimer's. And she had been in a nursing home for 7 years. She went in at 72. And at the end, at 79, she passed on. But when she went into that nursing home, it was $4,000 a month. And at the end, it was almost $9,000 or a little over $9,000 a month. A month.
It's ridiculous.
So, yeah. So,
well, hi, Jean. How are you?
Okay.
We're back from vacation. Welcome home from Cape Cod. I'm back from climbing a mountain. So that was a lot of fun. And I got to have my boots on the trail. Absolutely loved it. Mount Whitney is absolutely breathtakingly gorgeous. If you ever have the chance to get into the Mount Whitney wilderness, go for it. It was, Nick and I are going back next year.
Treva said she can't hear us. She said there's no sound.
Well, maybe Treva, let me see here. Let's see, Debbie Osborne Lewis, can you hear us? Let me see. Kara, sorry, folks, if we're having some technical difference. Okay, Debbie says she can hear.
Okay, fine.
Okay, so Kara, Kara's probably got headphone issues, or she needs to restart her phone or whatever. But sound is perfectly working on Kara, and Debbie says that. Okay,
excellent.
So it's
all right.
Sorry, Treva. We hope you get your ear stuff fixed.
Technology. You never know. Is it us? Is it us? Is it?
I know. It's always a mystery.
I know.
So anyway, welcome back from vacation, and we are. We're at the end of August already, and school is starting. We're in almond harvest has started full swing. Central California, Northern California, almond harvest has started, so we're crazy busy. So this is fall is coming. Fall is in the air, and I just talked to our New York office, and they said that it's been raining on the East Coast, so maybe we're going to have an early fall. Hard to say.
I don't know.
Can you hear me, Jean?
Oh, yeah, you broke up there for a minute.
Okay. So our topic today is Alzheimer's, and we're talking about a particular article out of Time magazine. Jean, take it away.
This magazine, this article, it was in the, let me see, this is the Time magazine, this issue where Spike Lee, long game on the front cover. And there was a great article in there, and I just absolutely was, first of all, it made me happy that they were discussing it, because it's kind of like the elephant in the room. And there was a whole issue of facts that absolutely blew me away. I mean, very, very disconcerting. 5.7 million number of people in the U.S. currently living with Alzheimer's disease. This is from the article.
Let's put that into perspective. 5.7 million people. Is that like the population of New York City? How many people are in New York City?
I don't know. But
somebody can tell us what the population. I mean, it's in the millions.
It's a lot. It's a lot of people.
Right.
And I think, and at one end we've got, autism at one end of the spectrum. And then we've got Alzheimer's at the other end of the spectrum. I mean, we've got kids who are not able to function in society within the norms, then the other end of the can't remember society and be able to function within. And then people in the middle.
The Parkinson's.
What?
Parkinson's disease. There's a whole plethora of variations of different types of Parkinson's disease.
There are. You just threw that out there. I was like, what? Where did that come from?
In the middle between the Alzheimer's and the autism.
Yeah. So you've got all of this. 5.7 million currently dealing with Alzheimer's. That was just absolutely disturbing to me. Then they expected by 2050 that there's going to be 14 million people to have Alzheimer's. That's in the US. They expect 150 million worldwide. Okay.
It's crazy.
And I actually think, this is just my own personal thought, I think that number's low.
Yeah, I think it is as well. I think it's bad.
Yeah. And then this is another one, big, huge number. And these numbers are just like, to me, just so absolutely so big that I can't even wrap my head around it. $277 billion, which is the amount that Alzheimer's and other types of dementia will cost the US in 2018, including insured, out-of-pocket, and uncompensated healthcare costs.
277 billion. Billion with a B.
B.
With a B. Yeah.
Oh my God. Here's another big number that I just can't even wrap my head around. 7.9 trillion, T with a T, amount in healthcare costs that will be saved over the lifetimes of people living with the disease if better ways are found to diagnose Alzheimer's and if that becomes available.
I want to put that into perspective. As I was prepping for Talking Tuesday, I wanted to give I like to have visuals. Being an accountant and dealing with cash and money, it's like, okay, $1 trillion. What does $1 trillion look like? So I Googled it. And what we're talking about is using $100 bills, a pallet. Everybody knows what a pallet looks like, a 4x4 pallet. So these are 4x4 pallets stacked 4 feet high, 2 pallets on top of each other. So 8 feet of $100 bills. And I think it was 67 rows times 100 rows of cash. And this was this huge visual of what 67 trillion or $7.9 trillion looks like. And it's you can't even comprehend that amount of money.
No, I can't. And what could that do for us, in terms of a society, in terms of, because we've got these are huge issues that are coming up, absolutely astronomically enormous. So in the article,
real quick, sorry, Jean, real quick. I just want to put things into perspective before we dive into the blood pressure side of this, is putting things into perspective, because Jean and I can both tell you firsthand, having a parent or an in-law with a cognitive disease, Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's. So, and my husband Nick's father is in a nursing home right now with advancing Alzheimer's. And so if you haven't planned for the financial requirements needed to take care of somebody with Alzheimer's, it can bankrupt people. I mean, like you said, the $9,000 on the East Coast, but the average private care, memory care home, and they have to be in locked down facilities, care homes, is because they wander off, is $7,000 private pay. So,
yeah, but this was not in New York City prices. This was in Pennsylvania, smaller Pennsylvania. So this was not like New York City, Boston, Washington D.C. prices. No.
Right.
And it started at 4,000, but then the care required for her went up as she went through, and as she started to decline, she needed more care.
Well, it's scaled. The care is scaled based on the patient's needs. The more medications they need, the more they charge. The more bathroom care they need, the more depends they need. The more higher the increasing of the pricing goes with the level of care. Right. So it's something that I'm 55. And have I planned and had a insurance policy since I was in my 20s for long-term health care? No. Nobody thinks about that when you're in your 20s, 30s, or even 40s. No. But this is why we're talking about this tonight on Talking Tuesdays is because we're in an epidemic situation in this country.
It's true. And I think what is promising is that, a lot of these things can be prevented. And we talked about this, on many, many occasions, by switching to a whole food plant-based diet. But, what was interesting was in the article, not once did they really talk about food. Not once.
Right.
Not once.
Let's back up, Jean, and talk about the article. I mean, again, for those of you who are just joining, what we're talking about here is the Time magazine article about Alzheimer's. Spike Lee's on the cover, and we're talking about...
It's from the August 20th, 2018. And before we dive into this article, please take a minute and share this on your timeline, because we all know somebody in Facebook groups that you're in. We all know somebody who is dealing with this in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, this is good information.
Yeah, this is not something that is like, oh, that's never happened to us. Are you kidding me? No, this is going to touch all of us in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, it is. And so, please share. We appreciate it.
Please share this on your timeline. Just go right under the video and please share. We're on the Starch Queens Facebook page. Please share. Okay. So
give us the scope of the article.
It talked about this one woman who had high blood pressure, and she was a 74-year-old woman, and she had high blood pressure, and she'd been taking medications to control this since she was in her early 30s. Okay, so for a long time. And oh, by the way, we talked with Dr. David Danaev, who talked about these medications in one of the other shows that we did. He talked about how these medications were not designed for long term. Like, she has been taking these medications since her 30s. So we're talking over 30 years that she's been on these medications. So that's a whole nother conversation. But anyway, so she read that, a hospital nearby was doing a study. And so she stepped up and volunteered. And what she didn't realize was by joining this trial that she wouldn't be just benefiting from her heart. It was called the Sprint Mind study. And it was designed to test whether aggressively lowering blood pressure would have an effect on the risk of cognitive decline of the symptoms of dementia related to Alzheimer's. Let me just clarify before we go further into the article, because I want to talk about the difference between the word dementia and Alzheimer's, because we sometimes use those words interchangeably. And dementia is kind of like the umbrella effect. Okay, it's kind of like if I said, oh, I've got a sore throat. Okay, a sore throat is kind of like, a general symptom of, there could be a lot of things causing that sore throat.
It's like when they say I have cancer. There's multiple kinds of cancer. It's an umbrella term.
It's an umbrella term. So that's what dementia is. And dementia basically talks about, it's a brain disorder that affects communication or performance of daily activities. Now, they don't say what specific activities, whereas Alzheimer's is the specific form of dementia that affects the brain, that controls thoughts, memory, language, all of those things in there. So I just wanted to clarify the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's, because Alzheimer's is a form of dementia. Okay, so it's specifically that's dealing with, you lose your mind, you lose your thoughts, your problem, being able to pull out and being able to function in terms of speech, as it progresses. So anyway, they had done this, and the Sprint study involved 9,300 elderly people who had heart problems or who were at higher risk of developing issues because of heart disease, developing heart disease because of high blood pressure. Okay, so they were randomized into two groups. One that was randomized to lower their blood pressure below 120 milligrams over 140. No. Yeah,
that's right.
Oh, so the two groups were lowering it less than 120, and the other group was 140. So they wanted to get this is the systolic measurement.
The top.
Yeah, the top. So they were tested on average of 3 years. over an average of 3 years on various cognitive skills, including memory and processing of new information. So if you start to think about it, biologically, this is going to make sense that blood pressure is going to have an impact on dementia. You know, because you think about it this way, you know, if you're comparing it to like the pressure in tires, you know, if you have tires either overinflated or underinflated, those can cause issues. But if it's right and perfect right on the button, then the tire runs and operates correctly. So, you know, it's this ability to be able to deliver blood, you know, to your brain and other organs that's going to be affected by this. So, and then that in turn affects inflammation, and, you know, then that triggers small strokes.
Let's talk, Jean, real quick about hypertension. I mean, you know, these things seem to be all connected, don't they?
Right.
So you have hypertension, and we know that that is a reduction in the vascular performance, the vascular velocity of the blood going through. So you have a blood vessel, and it's getting more and more and more constricted from plaque buildup. And so therefore you have hypertension. And so when you're not getting that oxygenated blood flow back up to your brain, what's happening? So there's so many combined problems that can lead to dementia, Alzheimer's, cognitive disease, that all roads lead back to what we put in our mouth, you know, basically.
That's the bottom line.
Bottom line. And
they said after an average of 3 years, they said the people who lowered their blood pressure to less than 120 milligrams of mercury lowered their risk of developing mild cognitive issues by 15% compared to the people who lowered theirs less than 140. So they noticed that this you know, definite decrease in terms of Alzheimer's or mild cognitive development. So there was that whole piece on that study. So this was great. I mean, this was the first time that they've ever done a randomized trial that they were able to actually have a cause-effect relationship with Alzheimer's, because up to this point, this is another number that absolutely is to me mind-blowing. 5. That's the number. 5. That's the number of drugs that are approved by the FDA to treat the symptoms, and not the cause of Alzheimer's. So all they're doing is addressing some of the symptoms. That's it. They're not trying to deal with the cause. And that really, it upsets me. It's kind of like the same thing with multiple sclerosis. You know, if you go to the MS website, they're going to talk about how to live with multiple sclerosis. Right. You know, and, you know, my husband, we didn't want to live with multiple sclerosis for my husband. We wanted to reverse it, you know, and that's what bothered me a lot about this article, is that they didn't talk anything about reversing it or trying to deal with it so that we didn't down the road get these Alzheimer's.
Or prevent it.
Or prevent, you know, there's nothing talking about it in terms of prevention, which really was, you know, rather disturbing.
Well, there is one spot in the article, Jean, that says this is what's so disturbing. When you think about these numbers here, it says 150 million people worldwide, 150 million people worldwide are expected to be affected by dementia by 2050. What is that? How many years is that from now?
Not many.
32 years. That's the lifetime of my oldest daughter. So in 32 years from now, they're saying 150 million people worldwide are expected to be affected by dementia. That's within our lifetime. So
absolutely. And I really think that number's low, actually.
Yeah, I do too. But this is what's interesting. It says, while there are many ways people can change their behavior to lower risk of heart disease and cancer, such as eating a healthy diet and exercising and avoiding or stopping smoking, there are few similar steps that have been scientifically proved to reduce the risk of Alzheimer's and degenerative brain disorders like Alzheimer's. It says here, genes play a prominent role in determining who will develop the disease, and age is also a major risk factor. And this we know in Dr. Barnard's book, Power Foods for the Brain, with the tangles and the beta amyloid plaque that they're finding through autopsy now, that there is a direct correlation between dementia, Alzheimer's, and this beta amyloid plaque.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we know about this, but it's kind of like the elephant in the room. We're not talking about what is causing this, because you just don't wake up. You just don't wake up and have Alzheimer's.
No.
This is something that has progressively been building and building and building. And in reflection, I look back at my mother-in-law, because my husband and I, this is round 2 for both of us. And we just celebrated our 9th anniversary. So it wasn't long after we got married. And actually on the weekend we got married, the weekend before, my father-in-law had a massive stroke, or I don't know if it was a heart attack or a stroke, but I know that he was in the hospital, and I thought we'd be going to a funeral shortly after we got married, because we really thought he was going to die. But he survived, thank goodness, and that's one of the wonders of medical, life. But it wasn't too long. And even in the beginning stages of our marriage, and we would go down to visit my mother-in-law and my father-in-law, I could see she had hard times, remembering things. She was very flustered so easily, anything. And it just started to get worse. It absolutely started to get worse. And it got to a point where she was just getting up in the middle of the night and looking at her husband going, "Who are you? And get out of here." And she was just absolutely afraid of him. A man that she had been with for a long time. They were madly in love with each other. And until this, and he couldn't move.
I handle it.
I know. And he couldn't move very fast because he had heart disease, and, he was overweight and whatnot, but she could still run or move very quickly. So she would just get up in the middle of the night and leave the house.
Right.
So
sad. So
and then,
sad.
or it is, or in the middle, if she was in the car, like somebody be driving, she'd get out in the middle of traffic and just get out and take off.
Yeah.
And take off.
Well, obviously the brain is not working correctly. And that's why they need, to be in a safe environment, a safe facility or a home with around the clock care. Because when the brain, like I, say in our Starch Queens group, the brain is our control center, it's our wheelhouse, it's our hard drive, it's our software, it's all of that. And when those we have start getting and we start misfiring and we get those tangles, then all bets are off on. We have absolutely we're completely a danger to others and in ourselves.
Oh, absolutely.
And I want to say how Kara mentions that that her grandmother also was in the same situation. It was heartbreaking for her. She was in a very expensive facility. She had a brilliant mind, and she had high blood pressure, and you just watch your elderly loved ones decline. It's just, I mean, it's killing me to go see Nick's father and see his progression. And it's been so rapid. It's just been, well, it's been over the last probably 10 years, but this last 2 years, it's just the deterioration is much more rapid, and it's just heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking.
Oh, so, I know.
But what we need to talk about too is that the 5 medications that they talk about in this article and how they don't work.
I know. They're only dealing with the symptoms, number one.
They don't work.
And they don't work.
Right.
And so, and it says in the article how they're just really not, going down this path in terms of medications to try and deal with it, because it doesn't help. And one of the things that throughout this whole article, not one thing talked about food in any way, shape, or form.
Nope.
And the woman who the article was about and so focused around, she says, as part of her efforts, Graham takes long walks, to change her health destiny. She takes long walks, does her own yard work in the summertime, and makes regular trips to the local YMCA to train with weights to maintain muscle strength. That's it.
Yeah.
Doesn't say anything about, and we know already by changing to a whole food plant-based movement, you can't, and this study didn't talk about how, and I would like to be interested in follow up about this. How did they aggressively treat the high blood pressure? Because we know majority of the people that go on a whole food plant-based diet can reduce high blood pressure without medication.
Right.
And get it back to normal or even less than normal.
Yep.
Without medication. And it never talks about this, not once in this whole article. And I think that really, really bothered me a lot.
I kept waiting for it as I progressed. I mean, so here's the article. This is what it looks like. So, you know, it's like 3 pages. So here's page 1, page 2, and page 3. And I thought it was interesting too, what they talk about here as far as alcohol. What I thought it was pretty interesting was the alcohol connection too. They're saying that drinking alcohol in moderation can lower the risk of heart disease and type 2 diabetes, but is less clear on how alcohol affects the brain. And it shows that it's definitely, I'm trying to find it here, that if you have 14 units of alcohol a week, the equivalent of 8 glasses of wine in the US, you have an increased risk of dementia by 40%. So let's put those 8 glasses of wine into perspective. Okay, I'm of the wine drinking, you are too, the age, my girlfriends love to go out and have, you know, wine. And so 8 glasses of wine. Okay, so what's a glass of wine? 6 ounces? So we're talking 48 ounces of wine maybe a week. So the big wine glasses now hold usually 8 to 10 glasses. And if you go to a high-end restaurant and you have 2 glasses of wine with dinner, there's your 20 ounces. And then you go out the next evening and you have 2 more glasses. And then say you're having dinner at home with your husband or a friend just midweek, you know, it's Thursday night, you're going to go to girls' night out. You have a couple glasses of wine. So what I'm trying to get at here is you can easily get to this 48 ounces of wine or alcohol in a given week if you're a moderate drinker. And it says here in the study that it can increase your risk of Alzheimer's by 40%. So how can they say that, but then not make the connection up here on the other side of saying it's less clear? So I thought that that was a little bit conflicting. So, but we know that all alcohol is, you know, red wine is a class 1 or alcohol is a class 1 carcinogen. So it's just best to
leave it alone.
Leave it alone. Leave it alone.
Debbie Lewis pointed out, she said a lot of the meds, you know, for Alzheimer's also have a lot of side effects. She said her dad couldn't take it because it upset his stomach too much. So, and that's anything. Anytime you're dealing with any kind of medication or anything that goes in or on the body, your body has to deal with it, you know?
It's a foreign object. It's a foreign invader. It's a foreign invader. We're not supposed to be taking these medications.
And another thing they talked about in the article was pregnancy, which I thought was interesting. They talked about a study. They said, well, 2/3 of the 5.7 million in the US affected by Alzheimer's are women. Okay. And they wanted to know if their reproductive history could have an impact on that, you know, when they began their period, how many children they had, you know, when did they start menopause? Could that have an impact on menopause? So they did 2 studies and they arrived at different answers in the studies, which I found interesting. So one study found that women who had 3 or more children have a 12% lower risk of developing dementia compared with women who just had 1 child. While the other study determined that women who have 5 or more children have nearly twice the risk of showing signs of Alzheimer's. So it was conflicting information. But one of the things that don't even, you know, discuss or talk about in this is because they talked about estrogen, you know, in this, in the level of estrogen in here. So my thought, and I'm just playing this because, you know, again, I teach environmental science and, you know, and I'm big into the chemicals of what happens and the impact that it has on your body. So there's a chemical compound or chemical family called parabens. And parabens are not estrogen, but your body thinks it's estrogen. So that's the whole chemical family. There's methylparaben, butylparaben, propyl, they're all bad. Okay, it doesn't matter. If the ending says paraben, you don't want it. And it's in a lot of personal care products, shampoo, deodorant, toothpaste, whatever. look on there. And if it says parabens, like I broke my wrist, you know, and I went for treatment, and she pulled out this tub of cream, and she takes a big hunk of it. And I said, what's that? She says, this is cream, you know, and I'm going to massage your wrist. We got to stretch out the tendons. I've been cut during surgery and blah, 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 blah. I said, just 1 second. And I pick it up. I turn the jar around. Not one, three. 3 parabens were in this cream. Not only 3 parabens, but there was 2 other chemicals in there, some seriously nasty stuff that were huge endocrine disruptors, huge. And I said, yeah, no. And I didn't say anything. I just pulled out of my Mary Poppins bag a whole nother cream and said, we're going to use this. And she finally asked me why later. And I told her, you know, the whole story. And I said, in 26 seconds, not only does it go through my skin, but it goes through your skin. Because she didn't wear gloves. She just was, you know, she washed her hands and then put cream on my, you know, whatever. But so it's in everything, but it's bioaccumulative, and your body thinks it's estrogen. So there was nothing that talked about that. And I'm wondering if that could also be having an impact on the dementia, not so much the estrogen and whether, you know, I think they're barking up the wrong tree. Maybe, I don't know, but I think they're barking up the wrong tree there. You know, I think it's because these are all bioaccumulative, and they're accumulating in your body. They're accumulating in these beta amyloid plaques that build up. I mean, and the list goes on and on.
I think there's just too much to study, Jean. I think there's too many contributing factors that we have in the last 50 years with the environmental toxins and chemicals that have been introduced to our environment and our personal care products in the last 50 years. There's how many thousands of chemicals that are on that are approved now by the FDA? So how can we do a study with every single chemical, with every single type of autoimmune disease there is, every type of dementia there is, every type of cancer there is? These studies would go on for hundreds of thousands of years.
I know.
So what we have to do is we have to make the connection that they're talking estrogen. We know chemicals like parabens are estrogen. What's the right word? Estrogen mimicking? Is it their estrogen?
Right.
And so we want to me, that's red flag, don't use it. You know, it's like, okay, we've made that connection there. These are out there, and just do the best you can to try and get as many of those types of parabens out of your personal care products. And it's just mind blowing. Like Debbie was saying, the side effects when my mom was alive and she was taking a plethora of medication, the side effects were almost worse than the reason she was taking them.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, it's like, okay, she's already a fall risk because of Parkinson's disease, but yet the 2 or 3 blood pressure medications she's on, side effect of dizziness. So, okay, you're going to be dizzy, but yet you're a fall risk. That's not good. And then the other medication they gave her for dementia, side effect was dizziness. So I think out of the 14 medications she took, more than half had a side effect of dizziness. So, you know, being your own health advocate, you need to look at all of these ingredients and the side effects of everything that you're taking, because there could be cross reactions and you could have side effects that are going to compound with other medications that you take. And then the poor senior citizen who has these cognitive delays as it is cannot make that connection. And they're like, they just take them, and then the whole downward spiral begins, and it's just heart-wrenching. So Jean, tell me how we can help prevent this. How can we prevent? Please. Tell us our viewers, simple. How can we help change the course? So if I'm 35 years old right now, or 32, or even 30, or in my 20s, but I've been eating the standard American diet my whole life, and I've not been shy about it. I'm the person who has Burger King once or twice a week. I have a bowl of ice cream. I have a margarita a couple times a week, or, you know, just then I have my meat and potatoes and my small salad and very little vegetables. What can I do now that's going to change the trajectory of my brain cognitivity?
We call it
the trifecta. The trifecta. Tell us what it is.
I'm so glad you asked.
I know.
You're great. I love it. Trifecta, you have to change what goes in. So that's the food and the drink. Okay. You got to change that.
Cheers. Cheers.
Cheers.
I got my jug.
Yeah, I know. You got to change the food. You got to change the drink. Okay. So food meaning you got to go whole food, plant-based. Okay. The drink is water or herbal tea. Done. That's it. Done. Infused waters. That's great. Okay. So you have to change what goes in. You have to change what goes on. So you have to change your personal care products. You got to get rid of the toxins. You got to get rid of the cleaning products. And if you're not familiar with the EWG, environmentalworkinggroup.org, please, I beg you, go on this website. This is your friend. They've got two databases. One's called the cosmetic database. Okay, the cosmetic database is not just cosmetics. It's all the personal care products. It's shampoo, deodorant, toothpaste, it's sunscreen. Sunscreens are some of the most toxic stuff out there, seriously. Change that. Find ones that are not toxic. Now, we found Pure Haven. You found, what was the other one? Zumi?
Oh, Zui. Zui. It's from Australia. Zuii. Oh my gosh. Love that stuff.
Okay, so you found Zui. I found Pure Haven Essentials. The whole product line.
And honest company too. Honest company, great stuff too.
So, if you're interested, do your research, go on to ewg.org, find these products that are not toxic to you. If you don't want to take the time, you can email me. I can show you Pure Haven Essentials. We got you covered.
But there's also just a lot of products out there that score 2 or lower on the EWG.
We want ones. We want ones.
We want ones. Okay.
We want ones.
We want ones. So
we want ones, and we want all the ingredients to be ones, if at all possible. So
and there's also on the list on the EWG, there's a list that you can click on for all of the products that are EWG approved.
Right. But we want to go for ones. Mm-hmm. So that's that. They have the cosmetic database, but they also have cleaning products. Mm-hmm. They have a whole list of cleaning products because some of those are some seriously nasty stuff. I mean, seriously, like any kind of like fabric, and you don't want fragrances in anything, okay? Because what they do is they hide a lot of chemicals in the fragrances. So fragrance free for everything, unless you know where the fragrance is coming from. Like, for example, all the products from Pure Haven use essential oils to fragrance it. So that it has a very light scent, in their products. So, but that's because they use essential oils. They don't chemicals.
Go ahead. I actually have been mourning the loss of my beloved candles. The big candles that I would get from Bed Bath and Beyond that I just loved it. But now I'm using my essential oil diffuser on a regular basis, and my house smells better than it did with the candles.
Right.
So for a small investment of the diffuser, which you can get on Amazon, you can get them. My friend Mary Beth does Young Living, and so they have diffusers. And just make sure your essential oil is organic or
that you know where it's coming from.
Seed to something. They call that certification, that the source of it, because you don't want it to be diluted and you want it to be a pure oil. But oh my goodness, that stuff smells so good.
I know. And it's amazing.
So we did probably, we have a lot of viewers that are plant-based, and we have some that are learning to be plant-based. So you may have just overwhelmed people with going plant-based. What's the best way somebody can just go cold turkey or can ease into it so they can start thinking about cleaning house, getting healthy, start thinking about the future? I like to look at this as the future. We're in the Starch Cleans program, we live in today. We can't do anything about yesterday and the history, but what we have control over is today. And we have our long-term goals, and then we have our life goals. And when we're looking at the future and we're looking at reports that have very depressing millions, billions, and trillions statistics in it, and we are in control of what goes in our mouth, what do we do? So I think, Jean, we should say real quick that on January 1st, we're going to be doing a boot camp for people to transition to a whole food plant-based lifestyle. And I think it's important that people can start looking at the this lifestyle right now. I believe it's an urgent situation.
Oh, absolutely.
I think that it's urgent. And I mean, I know for me personally with my 2 daughters that I actually stay awake at night thinking, you know, I've got to, because I know if I knew in my 30s what I knew now, my girls would have been raised vegan. They would have been raised
absolutely
whole food, plant-based. And it's just, it does make me anxious. But again, you can't lead somebody to the food and make them eat it.
No.
That's the downside of it. And we talk a lot about that in the Starch Queens program. So what we can do is take even baby steps, right?
Right.
And what is the first thing somebody should remove? And we should talk real quick about that, Jean. I know where is dairy, because that's the next big thing that we want to talk about tonight is Dr. Linda Carney's article on her blog about the connection between Parkinson's disease and dairy. Yes. Take it away, Jean.
Well, and this was really interesting. I thought, you know, in reading this article, because she said that people who consumed dairy products were more likely to develop Parkinson's disease than those of people who avoided these types of foods. This was in a study published in the European Journal of Epidemiology. And they used data from over 300,000 people, and they raised that these researchers observed that for every 10 grams of cheese and 200 grams of milk that were consumed per day, that you raise the risk of developing Parkinson's by 13% for the 10 grams of cheese, and 200 grams of milk, 17%.
That's a little bit. That's just a little bit. Does people realize how much a gram is?
I know. So
it's
small.
Not much.
Small. Right.
So small.
Yeah, and this study was, you know, corroborated by another study where researchers were finding 120,000 men and women who found out that subjects on diets rich in dairy products exhibited an increase in Parkinson's disease risk. And they have talked about, where was that in here? They've showed from evidence from various scientific studies have shown that dairy products can be among the most disease-promoting foods that people put in their bodies. Dairy products have been linked as a causal factor in osteoporosis, obesity, cancer, allergies, type 1 diabetes, and multiple sclerosis.
MS.
And MS. I mean, and that's one of the things we live with in our house, or we don't live with in our house anymore, because my husband's reversed that. And that was one of the things we started right away getting off of dairy, and mercury was another thing. When we first got married, my husband had, somehow we got onto the topic of the mercury fillings. And he says, how do I know if I have them? And I said, open your mouth. And he had 9. And that night, I'm calling the dentist, I'm texting, hi, we need to get these out, you know, and over the next 3 months, he couldn't do them all in one shot. It was 9. So we did 3 at a time. But they talked about how that Parkinson's disease is caused by the loss of these neurons located in a certain part of the brain. And these neurons produce the chemical messenger dopamine that sends signals to the part of the brain that coordinates and, you know, controls and coordinates movements. That's why, like, you got the shaky hands and stuff like that. And they say that uric acid is a powerful antioxidant that helps to protect these dopamine producing neurons in this part of the brain. And, you know, what happens is that dairy lowers the plasma concentrations of the uric acid by promoting excretion of uric acid and inhibiting the activity of this oxidase. So this plays a key role in this, in the Parkinson's. So they say about 60,000 new cases of Parkinson's disease are diagnosed in the U.S. each year. And
that's too many.
I know. And Parkinson's has no cure. So, you know, so you're dealing with this. So, you know, it just absolutely makes me crazy, you know, especially for the cheese. You know, I did the whole series with Dr. Barnard on the cheese trap. And if you've not seen this series, it's on starchqueens.net. It's under videos, the tab videos. Their whole series is there on the cheese trap. And he talks about all the issues, and it's not gross or it's not disturbing or anything, but the facts after you listen to, first of all, how cheese is made, and then you go through the process of what the issues are with it because of the casomorphines that are in it, it's concentrated, and all the other issues that go along with it. It's just absolutely, you just like, oh yeah, no, I'm not doing cheese anymore. And that killed it. After I did the cheese trap and did the series with him, yeah, no, not that I was, consuming dairy or cheese, but it was like, yeah,
You didn't want a fresh glass of pus?
No.
Pus.
It's so much. It's more. The milk I'm okay with. I had no problem going. Yeah, nope, none. Okay, I can deal with that. But it's the cheese, and the cheese is so addicting because it's so concentrated. And when I'm at like parties, we have parties at school where they have like all these beautiful cheese platters and stuff like that. And up until that point, it's not that I would go over and eat them, but I'd still be like, "Oh, I miss that. I really do." Now, no, it's like I look at that and go, "Oh, that's disgusting. That is just so disgusting."
There's nothing good about cheese. With Nick having worked in the dairy industry, and growing up, and my grandfather being my dad being born and raised on a dairy, and remembering going out to the milk barn with my uncle milking the cows. And so first and foremost, there's no happy cow comes from California. Let me tell you that right now. The dairy industry is brutal on animals, and it's filthy dirty. The amount of bacteria and pus that's allowed in the product they say is okay for human consumption is unbelievable. The amount of pus and bacteria and hormones and antibiotics and all of that is just such a farce. Organic milk, there's no organic milk.
But what I want to know is, I would have liked to have been a fly on the wall on the first time somebody like invented cheese, because it's the bacteria that they use. That's the same bacteria that causes your feet to smell. That's
the culture. That's the culture that they use.
Did somebody like take a bucket and stick their feet into it and I'm going to wash my feet and then it congealed into cheese? I don't know. And somebody tasted it and went, oh, this is pretty good. I mean, what happened? How did we do this?
I don't know. But yeah, whoever did it, we need to take them out and tell them, don't do it. Go back in time travel and say, don't make the cheese. But the bottom line is it's pure fat.
I know.
Pure fat. It's pure salt. It's highly salt. It's very, very addictive. The casomorphine reacts in your brain. So, really, really, folks, if you're watching tonight, and if you watch this at a later time for the replay, we need you to get off of the dairy. Is your very first thing that you need to do is to remove that dairy. And then, as get that meat out of your diet. The meat has casein protein in it, high, cholesterol. There's no lean meat. Pork is not the other white meat. Chicken, pork, beef, turkey, it's all fat. It's all pure fat. It's all contains cholesterol. Every time you think you're eating a healthy chicken breast, you're not. You're adding cholesterol. You're adding, Jean, tell us what bioaccumulative chemicals are in like their chicken breast or their sirloin roast, or I don't even remember the names of meat anymore.
There's two types of chemicals, that come into your body that your body has to deal with. Because anything that goes in or on your body has to deal with this, whatever it is. So there's two types. There's one's called fat soluble, the other one's called water soluble. So if it's something that's water soluble, you're going to pee it out. Your body's going to deal with it and then get rid of it and pass it out through the liquid waste.
Right.
If it's fat soluble, which is what a lot of these chemicals are, is fat soluble, your body goes, yeah, no, it goes right into the fat cells and it becomes these toxic dumps for a lot of, yeah, it does. It does. And this is one of the things that we talk about in the Starch Queens, because as you start to burn this fat, you're releasing, that 57 Chevy license plate that, went down, when you were doing your stupid stuff in your, college days. Yeah, that's coming out. That's coming out. And you're going to feel like crap as you go through these detox. Yeah. And know that, and people get scared about it because it's like, oh my God, I feel like crap. I didn't feel this bad before. I should go back. And it's like, no, because your body's starting to get rid of some of these toxins. And as they come out, you're going to feel it. You're going to be sick.
You know, you're going to be sick. And I've lost a few people last year when we were doing our 10-day challenges that couldn't take it. They were unable to get past the 4th or 5th day because they have just by no fault of their own. I mean, a lot of people didn't know. They haven't watched Forks Over Knives. They haven't got to the point in their journey where they've got the education to realize about all these bioaccumulative chemicals, these bioaccumulative toxins that reside within us. And as we burn them and they go through our bloodstream, we have to eliminate them. And you get the headache, the fatigue, the nauseousness, the vertigo, all of that flu-like symptoms. And they just throw in the towel. But you got to go through it. You know, it's brutal. It's like
that's one of the things. That's one of the things we talk about in the program, because we talk about how and some of the issues and some of the things that you feel, and you learn to recognize the symptoms, and we talk about that frequently. And this is one of the things that we're big about, because it's hard to go through transitioning to a whole food plant-based diet. It's hard. And you and I have both both done it on our own, and we've changed a lot of our health destiny. But it wasn't until we started really connecting with other people and seeing how other people are really struggling and having a hard time doing it. Because you're usually by yourself, you know, either you or you and your husband, or, you know, but you're different from all the other people around you, you know, people that you work with that think you're an absolute nutcase. And, you know, so what do you eat? Grass or, you know, tree bark? What are we talking here? You know? And so you're kind of isolated. So that's, you know, it's hard to deal with it. You don't know what's going on. When you start to feel bad, you don't know what the symptoms are. And we talk about this. We embrace that because we know this is working. We embrace it. We know it's going to pass in a couple of days. We got to flush out your system, drink chamomile tea. We talk about the strategies to deal with it. And we embrace it. So we know that it's there. We know that it's happening. And we see it all the time with our members in the group. So it's great to have this. We talk about in Starch Queens, we have a huge educational program. Monday through Fridays, we have an educational topic that I research. And then you go and do Driving with Nancy. And if you've never seen any of Nancy's, she's awesome. She takes whatever the educational topic is for the day. She puts her cell phone on the dashboard of her car. She's driving to work. Hi, everybody. You know, and she just goes into it and she starts talking about the educational topic for the day. So there's a huge amount of education, which both of us agree, you know, is crucial for you to understand.
It's everything. It's the foundation. It's everything. Everything. It's everything. Because like you said, it wasn't until you read the book, The Cheese.
Nancy?
Everything that Dr. Garth, hello?
Yeah, you're there.
Oh, yep. Okay. Like I said, education is everything, because like you mentioned, until you went through the cheese trap with Dr. Garth Davis, Neil Barnard. Dr. Neil Barnard, I was thinking Proteinaholic, that you're never looking at cheese again the same way, because it was so scientifically explained to you in a good, understandable way that you're like, it's not food. I'm not putting this in my body ever again. So you have to have that foundation, and then you make the connections, and it's like, wow, why didn't I know this before?
Exactly. And then you know what the best part about this, Nancy?
What's that?
We're not in pain.
None.
You went backpacking. I was out sailing. I went out last week sailing on a Hobie cat with my brother. Now, a Hobie cat, if you've never seen a Hobie cat, this is not just, I'm going to lay back and just, you know, let the sail go flop, 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 flop. No. This is really active. You're crawling around, you know, you're down low and you've got to shift your weight. And I was out, you can get the guide wires, and I'm literally out planked, flat out, planked off the edge of the Hobie cat. So I'm able to pull up. I'm almost 60 years old. I'm out there having a ball.
Yeah.
You're out backpacking.
Yeah.
For a whole week.
I'm climbing a mountain, the highest mountain in the lower 48 states, and sleeping on a rock 3 nights in a row that would put a lot of people who might have inflammation or Alzheimer's on a stretcher.
Yeah.
But my C-reactive protein is like, it didn't even measure. My doctor was like, you have no inflammation in your body at all. And so, these are the side effects of this way of eating.
I know, right?
These are the side effects. These are the side effects that doesn't cause dementia, doesn't cause dizziness, doesn't cause bloating and gas, or some of those side effects that you see on TV for the little purple pill, or for, whatever diabetes drug it is, flavor of the month. If you have suicidal tendencies, it's like, oh yes, I'm going to run right to my doctor and ask for that drug. No, you don't need them. You need to get rid of cheese. You need to get rid of dairy. You need to start looking at your salt and sodium intake and sugar, and start changing the course. You're driving the wheel, everybody. You have the wheel in your hand. You're driving your own bus. You are in charge of your health and destiny, nobody else. And like I said, we were talking about this with our coaching call, because the Starch Queens has a coaching call every Sunday. And we get into a lot of the psychology of it, so people understand that it's okay to be different. And we're talking about, here's the herd and here's you. The herd's eating standard American diet. You're over here eating plant-based. The herd still loves you. It's okay to be outside of the herd, but you're just eating differently because it's what's right for you. And the herd's going to go, okay, so, you're still part of the herd, and the herd might be going, well, how long is this diet going to last? And so don't feel isolated. Yes, you're going to be eating differently. There's no doubt about it, but it can work. And I'm here to tell you, Jean's here to tell you, and there's so many people that in the plant-based world that can give you testimony after testimony about the importance and the health changing effects. I mean, people are off blood pressure medicine. People are off type 2 diabetes medication. People have reversed heart disease. They've literally unblocked their arteries without bypass surgery. This is the miraculous side effect of this diet. And it's very powerful. And on that note, Jean, we're gonna talk about what's happening real quick. I know we've got to wrap it up at 6 o'clock because you have another webinar. First, I want to thank everybody for joining in tonight.
And please share on your timeline. Share this. Take 1 second, share it on your timeline, because somebody else who sees your timeline might go, hey, I want to hear about this.
Yeah,
it might have an impact.
Right. And it's also, you can go to Google the Time Magazine article. I put it on the event on our Starch Queens Facebook page, so you can read the article for yourself in detail. We thought it was a great topic today. Real quick, you can find our program at sqweightloss.com. We also have a website that has a lot of great information on how to transition to a plant-based lifestyle. You can find our program there, a link to that as well, at starchqueens.net. And I put the program, the link to our website in the comments. We hope all of you will pay attention and really think about this, because Alzheimer's, cognitive diseases, dementia, the umbrella term, is an epidemic. And that's just one. Heart disease is an epidemic. We haven't even talked about cancer. I wanted to touch base on Dr. Goldhammer's newsletter at True North about the woman who's now 3 years out of reversing her non-Hodgkin's lymphoma by fasting and her plant-based diet. And it was actually published in the British Medical Journal.
We'll talk about that next week.
We'll talk about that next week. So again, thank you so much for joining us. Jean, I don't think you pushed record, so be sure and save this this live broadcast. And we hope everybody has a great Tuesday evening. And thank you for joining us.
Good night.
Good night, John Boy. Good night, Mary Ellen.
Good night, John Boy. Yeah, I did my time. I forgot.
We love you, and thank you for joining the Starch Queens.
Good night.
Night.